Hey, welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Jakey. Got a smile on my face. Surprising. Shit just falling apart around here in a good way. I am at my friend's house in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn. My house, I guess, because home is where the heart is, right? My heart is with my friend Christine, and also just being here. This is where I'm going to be for the next month. Minus a trip to Detroit, probably a trip to Philly, who knows where else. Yeah, what a week since we last chatted. I know it's Wednesday, but I've been traveling and blah, who cares, right? Yeah, it's been an insane week. So I left Yellow Pine and found out my car was in dire straits and not working well. So I think I told you guys on the last episode that I sort of took that as a sign that maybe at least that chapter of Idaho was over for me. And it made me feel better about leaving the state, knowing that, like, okay, this car that I had is now gone. Little Miss Sally. Not necessarily gone, but like needing repair that's going to cost more than I wanted to pay to fix it. So I ended up stressing about it over the weekend and trying to figure out what to do with it. And I looked up like 1-800 Cars for Kids and looked up getting it taken away by a junk removal service. And of course I had Johnny Pacalolo telling me, don't get rid of it. Used cars are worth so much money now. And it's like, right, I know, but I also don't have the time to oversee the sale. So I ended up bringing it to my buddy Dan, who owned the farm. Patsy and Dan owned the farm that I worked on in McCall. And I called them. And I don't remember if I called them before I did my podcast or after. I think before. So I think I told you guys I was going to be bringing it down to Patsy and Dan's farm and offered Dan to go 50-50 on whatever he could sell it for. And then when I brought it down to him, he had mentioned that, like, the troubles he's had with his car and the trouble he's had with Patsy's car, and they just have older cars around the same age as mine. I think his Jeep Cherokee was even older. She's got a 2000 PT Cruiser. Mine was a 2001 BMW 325xi, all-wheel drive. And so I just said to Dan when I was down there, I was like, you know what, Dan, like, if you guys are having trouble with your cars and, like, this is something you think you can fix and is worth fixing and you want this car, like, you can just have it. And he was like, what? And I was like, you can just have it, man, because I was getting ready to throw it away anyway and just donate it to someone. I was like, the car served me well. It got me through a lot more time than I thought it was going to, and it's not the kind of car I want to have for the long haul. I kind of don't want to have a car, period, for the long haul if I can avoid it, other than I'd be stoked to get a Sprinter, or even maybe a 4Runner, but maybe a Sprinter to, like, live in. I think I would be fine with that and just drive around. I honestly do. I know a lot of people say they're down with van life, but I think I would totally handle that and kind of just mosey around and attach my bike to the back of it somehow. But yeah, I don't think I want, like, if I'm going to live in a wintry area, then I'd want, like, a 4Runner or, like, an SUV that has high clearance. Especially in the winter and then in the summer too, right? To be able to drive down rugged dirt roads and shit like that. But I just said to Dan, like, look, man, if you want this car, you can have it. And he was like, oh my God, wow. And he's like, all right, like, I'll check it out. And this was last Tuesday, so 8 days ago, and I haven't heard a peep from him since. He did ask how to get it in reverse, because it's a little tricky. It's a manual transmission, stick shift, and it was a little tricky to get in reverse, and he had texted me later that night after I dropped it off saying, hey, how do you get it in reverse? And he said, I'm going to pull it into the barn and put it over some sawdust and see how bad the radiator's leaking. Because, of course, what was a very terrible radiator leak they told me about, the next 2 times I drove it, I looked under the car before I turned it off, and it was leaking a lot of radiator fluid. But then I filled the radiator fluid twice with the coolant, and then the next 2 times I drove it after that, didn't notice any leaking whatsoever. So I'm like, wow, what the fuck? But I had already told Dan I wanted to sell it, and then I just said, hey, man, like, if you want it, you can have it. And just kind of karma, right? Like, I'm obviously not in the place where I should be giving away a car. if I can get some money out of it, financially speaking. But also, that's kind of what I do, is I'm generous to a fault. And I think that's why people have been generous with me, obviously, in since I left New York in the pandemic, and is that, I think I got a lot of good karma in the bank. So I just putting more karma in the bank by just offering Dan and Patsy to have this car. But they're just such cool people, and they're older and probably on some sort of fixed income, Social Security, whatever it is. If I can make their life easier, because they're just such rad fucking cool people, and you don't meet a lot of like really cool people in this world. So whatever I can do for them, I'm happy to do, and I'm happy that I don't have to worry about having that car anymore. So after that, I took the bus down to Boise, which I was the only guy on the bus wearing a mask, and I don't give a fuck if I'm the only guy anywhere wearing a mask. I got COVID, as you guys know. I got a really bad case of it 2 years ago, and it was brutal, and it led to some really rough lung infections, and I'm not trying to get it again. So I'm going to wear a fucking mask on the bus, and I wore a mask all week when I worked at the festival. So I worked Treefort Festival. So I took the bus down to Boise, and then took an Uber to the Red Lion Downtowner Hotel. And the Uber guy was funny. He gave me a little bit of a hard time for wearing a mask in Idaho, man. And he said, "Oh, we're doing masks on." I was like, "Yeah, if you wouldn't mind," because I had my mask on when I got in the car with him. And he's like, "Hey, man, like, whatever you want. Like, I'm just trying to keep 5-star ratings. So you want to wear a mask? Cool. Most people don't, and if they don't, I don't, because I don't really care. But if you do, that's cool." And I was like, "Cool, that's the vibe I like." And he was like a big guy, big, beefy, bald guy with a goatee and Oakley sunglasses, driving a Honda Accord, which I thought was a little odd. But car was spotless, and I liked that was his attitude. Like, he very much looked like a right-winger. But I love that his attitude was, "Hey, man, whatever you want to do, whatever makes you feel more comfortable." Like, there have been other situations where in Idaho where I had a masked up for something, and like you definitely get the vibe that people think you're crazy. But anyway, I don't care if people think I'm crazy. I don't want to get sick. And the Asians had it right a long time ago. They've been wearing masks forever, right? And like they don't get colds, and they don't spread their colds as often. I think probably that's the urban legend anyway. But like, yeah, I don't care if you think I'm weird for wearing my mask. Then who fucking cares? So then I get down to I go down to the festival. I check into the hotel. Oh, and the dude was like, "Hey, don't forget to make sure you tell him about your room upgrade. Ha ha." And he's like, "Never hurts to ask." So of course I go to check into the hotel, and it's not a nice place. It's nicer than the Cabana, aka the Murder Motel, but only a couple of steps up. And it was nice probably in the 50s when they built it, but it's like the kind of hotel now where like kind of looks decent when you walk in, but then you peek around and it's like the wallpaper's fading, the wooden floor laminate tile is coming up, the ring around the light above the shower is rusted. It's just grungy. And it could use a full overhaul, but it's usually pretty cheap. It's usually like $139, which when I stay in Boise, the Cabana is usually $72. So obviously I'm going to go for half price, and it's 2 blocks further away from downtown than the Cabana. But I was stoked to get there, and I walked in, and it felt nice to have someone else paying for a hotel for me for the first time in a long time. We would have that happen pretty regularly in tragedy, and I did some consulting gigs in the early 2010s, late 2000s, where I was getting paid to go places, and people putting me up in hotels, and like no better hotel than one you don't have to pay for. And then the next best hotel is a cheap-ass one that you pay for and you make the best out of, and then on top of that is like the nice hotels. Obviously, it's nice to stay at nice hotels when you can afford it. But I joked with the woman. I was like, "You have the presidential suite for me, the one with the hot tub and the vibrating heart-shaped bed?" And she was like, "We don't have any suites." And I was like, "I know, honey." And she ended up giving me a nice room on the 5th floor that overlooked the mountains, so that was pretty nice. And I went up there and I immediately unpacked, and I brought my Christmas lights, which I posted to Instagram. I love bringing, You just bring a string of red or purple Christmas lights to a hotel or motel and plug them in, and voila, all of a sudden you've got like a nice room. It may not be a nice room to start with, and hotel lighting's never going to be good, right? It's almost never on dimmers. It's usually like you turn something on and it's bright, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. But Christmas lights make all the difference. So there's a travel hack for you. If you're going to be staying outside of your house in a hotel anytime soon, just put one string of Christmas lights in your bag. It'll make all the difference when you check in. And if that's too much for you, then you kind of don't deserve a nice, pretty room to stay in. Then I went over to the festival site to meet with my boss lady and set up for the next day, and spent like 2.5 hours doing setup, which wasn't part of my scheduled hours. She had said leading into it, like, I need you to come by, just to give you the quick rundown of how check-in's going to work. I didn't realize it would be 2.5 hours, which, whatever. I agreed to the gig. I agreed for a set price. So it's like, okay. What else was I going to do? I was going to go see my friend Kevin, who hooked me up with the job, who lives in Boise, my buddy K-Dog that I've been hanging with when I go down there. And he had hired a bunch of other ex-New Yorkers to work the festival, and they were all having dinner. But by the time I finally finished with that gig, it was like 9:30, and I had to go drop my bag back off at the hotel. And then by the time I got back there, I was exhausted because I had been up first thing, and like just the whole travel, leaving Yellow Pine, being in McCall, car broken, and trying to figure things out. I was just kind of spent, and I wanted to get my rest for the festival because it was 4 12-hour days in a row. Doing artist check-in, which I'd never done, obviously, at a festival. Maybe not so obvious, but like I figured, how hard could it be? And I went in there thinking like, oh, how hard could it be? I didn't really understand the depth and breadth of this festival, that it was 525 bands plus another few hundred people through the different forts. The festival's called Treefort, but then they have Artist Fort, they have Story Fort, which is spoken word stuff, they have Podcast Fort, they have Kid Fort, which is kids programming for kids. They had Drag Fort, which is a bunch of drag queens doing performances. And Hack Fort, which was all about tech stuff, and they had Comedy Fort, a bunch of comedians. So on the first day, the fort leaders were checking in their fort people, but on the second day, that became my responsibility too. And I had 525 bands to check in, and each of them got a packet with a wristband, a festival wristband for each band member, which are those cloth ones that you put on and tighten up. And then they had those paper wristbands, like the over 21 type of wristbands, that was good for the artist lounge. And then I would have to give them that spiel. Hey, have you guys ever done Treefort before? Oh, no? Okay, well, here's your festival wristband. And then this other wristband is for the artist lounge. That's on the 7th floor of this building. You just take the elevator to the top floor. If you don't remember 7, it's cool. Get in the elevator, push the highest numbered button. It's going to take you up to the 7th floor. You're going to get off there. Then there is an artist lounge. There's going to be all sorts of free food and snacks and sodas. And then here's also 2 drink tickets for each member of your touring party to use up there, only in that artist lounge. Oh, you want drinks other than that? They would always ask, is this all the drink tickets we get? No, when you get to the venue where you're playing, there were over 40 different venues. When you get to the venue you're playing, check in with your venue manager. The rules for every venue are different, but they'll probably have some free drinks for you there too. Okay, cool. Oh, and also, here's this gift bag. And every artist, every band got a gift bag. And there were 525 bands, and each of them got a little white gift bag. And it had oat milk and some flavored peanuts, and most of them had a T-shirt. Treefort T-shirt, which was pretty smart. They make these really nice volunteer T-shirts for everyone who volunteers, and they took T-shirts from years past and put them in the gift bags. And then there was earplugs. There was a 20% off card for the Boise Record Exchange, which is a fucking awesome record store. I think it's, as far as ratio between how awesome a record store is and how small the city it's in is, it's probably the best record store. Like, it's like a mini Amoeba, if you know Amoeba well. It's just got an amazing selection. It's laid out well. They have a coffee shop inside. It's pretty fucking big. They have tons of in-store performances. They have a good book section. They sell turntables and amplifiers and speakers and needles, and then they have a whole other section that's just like cool gifts. Really cool spot, and it recently got sold. The owners who owned it didn't want to operate it anymore, and they sold it to the employees, which is fucking rad, because everything else in Boise is becoming sort of getting knocked down to build more condos, and nobody needs none of that, you know what I mean? So yeah, there was a discount card in there for that, and there was like other random assorted stuff, some stickers, toothbrush and toothpaste from a local dentist, packets like that, which touring bands love. So I'd give them that whole spiel, and then I would have to like cross them off and then enter them into a database. And day one, we checked in 221 artists because all the local artists wanted to get their wristbands first day so they could go participate in the festival. And it was me, and on day one, I had 3 volunteers. I had this woman, Mercedes, who was awesome, kind of a lifesaver because she had volunteered doing artist check-in for every year of the festival. It's in its 10th year now. So I had someone beside me who kind of knew what they were doing. And the boss lady, she's leaving the festival this year. She was one of the founders and always dealt with artist relations. So she was sort of like training her replacement. So they were kind of busy off doing their own thing, and her replacement couldn't give me that much guidance because it was her first year at the festival, or maybe second, and she was just kind of like every time I asked her something, she was like, I don't know, we should talk to the other woman. So then I learned pretty quickly, okay, just use your own brain and figure all this out. And of course, like, bands would come and say, oh, there's supposed to be 7 of us, but you only have us down for 6. Can we get an extra wristband? And they had left me a whole bag of extra wristbands, so I just had to use my own judgment for the most part. Like a few times I would text the festival director, this dude Eric, and then the other 2 women, Jenny and Kara. And then after a while, I was like, I don't need to be bothering them with this. They just say yes every time. So I'm like, all right, I'll just, use my own brain and trust these people. And then other bands would show up and they'd be like, oh, well, you're supposed to have 7 in our touring party, but it's only 6. So I would take a wristband out and put it away. And you had to be somewhat not stingy, but conservative with the wristbands because they cost $290. So I was just trying to make sure that people weren't like, oh, my girlfriend came with me, she needs a wristband. So I was different. If it was a local Boise-based band, I would say no. And I'd say, hey, I'm sorry, I only have these ones to give you. But then when bands are on tour, it's like, yeah, maybe we advanced 5 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, whatever. And like, yeah, we added a crew member, or we got a lighting guy now that we didn't have before, whatever. So I would kind of be more lenient with them. But with the local bands, you can kind of tell they're like, we have one more person. Could we get an extra wristband? And you're like, ah. And I would say to them, I would like, hey, you know what? Like, I only have what I have. I don't have any extras to give you. So you should just contact the person who booked you. And if they say it's okay, have them text me and I'll give you one. And pretty much never. I think one time they actually contacted Eric Gilbert, the festival director, and then he contacted me. But for the most part, I was like, nah, I don't think so, buddy, because I know this is just going to be for your girlfriend. And then the other biggest request we got was like, can we get more drink tickets? And for the most part, I was like, no, like, this is all we have. And they didn't actually leave me a lot of extra drink tickets, so I didn't have a lot of leniency there. But I did notice that there were a bunch of bands that were like kids for the Kid Fort bands, I guess, that were like School of Rock type of bands. And they would have like 2 drink tickets per band member, and like some of these bands had 10 and 12 kids, or 3 different bands that had at least 10. So when they showed up to check in, I was like, you guys are like 12 years old. I'm not giving you drink tickets. So I'd take the drink tickets out and then use those for bands that were like really cool, and I give them a little extra. So it was cool to have a little leeway and leniency and that type of thing when dealing with these bands. But yeah, everyone got these gift bags, and the gift bags were so rad. I will post a couple pictures on the Tuesdays with Jakey Instagram today. But they had kids from the local Boise School of Rock and local Boise high school music students design bags, and people like they with either markers or paint would do up these really intricate bags. Some of them were collage for all the bands, and then after I would get the band checked in and have everything else done, I would give them their gift bag, and they'd be so stoked, and I got a bunch of bands to take pictures of them. There's this cool metal band doom metal band called Witch Mountain, that one of the kids actually did a Witch Mountain piece. It was probably one of their album covers on an actual piece of canvas, and then they scanned that and printed it out and put that on the bag, and then put the canvas inside. And I got a picture of Lightning Bolt with theirs, and Jeff Rosenstock. Someone did an amazing portrait and marker for him, and unfortunately I was on a little break when he checked in, so I didn't get to say hi to him and show him his bag, but there were numerous good ones. So I'll put those on the Tuesdays with Jakey Instagram if you want to see them. So bands were psyched to get that, and it's like these personal touches that made the festival so cool. And I gotta say, this festival was rad as fuck. The hours were really long. The first day I didn't get a break at all. I could have taken one. I was kind of told to like take as many breaks as you want. That's why you have volunteers. Go see whatever music you want. But I was also trying to be super conscientious and do my job properly. So day one, I don't think I took a single break other than to run out and get some food. And I saw a band while I walked past the main stage and back. And then that day was supposed to be 12 to 8 on the schedule. And then after the first night, the woman Jenny was like, "So I'll see you tomorrow at 9." And I was like, 9? The schedule says noon, noon to 8. And she was like, "Oh, well, we still need more setup to do. So if you get here at 9, and I was like, "Oh, holy Christ." So then by the end of that day, I was just fucking spent, because the whole day was basically on my feet. I thought I'd just be like sitting down and like, oh, hey, checking you in and handing you an envelope. But it was way more involved, and there was more talking to the bands. And, I should have thought that, because nothing's ever as simple as you imagine. But I wasn't sitting down. I was standing up pretty much the whole time. And then you got to go over to one section of the ballroom where we were set up in the ballroom of this hotel, and like, all 525 of these gift bags and all these envelopes, so took up a lot of room. So it's just a lot of walking back and forth, and then you had to be on for each band and like give them some energy and like, "Hey, welcome to Treefort Fest, man. Oh, how's it going? Is this your first time? You've been to Boise before? Oh, thanks for coming to our cute little town," and all that. So by the time that first day was over, I was fucking spent. And that day was supposed to end at 8, and at 7, Jenny texts me, and she's like, "Hey, it looks like there's going to be a lot of stragglers, like bands that are traveling today that aren't going to make it for 8 o'clock. Would you mind staying till 10? And I was like, "Oh, no, of course I don't want to do that. I'm so beat." But I was like, well, yeah, of course, because I'm a team player. And I thought about asking for more money, but I was like, it's a little uncouth. Let's see what she says. Maybe I'll ask later. And she was like, "Oh, my God, thank you. You're so amazing." And then like an hour later, she texted me and said, "Hey, that's really cool of you to be staying. I'm going to add $50 to your pay." And I was getting paid $1,000 for the 5 days, which turned into 6 days, really, because of that first day. And didn't really think about it hourly. I guess it would have come out to like $20 an hour, and then you add all those extra hours, and it got lower. But I wasn't... yeah, it was nice to make some money, but it was really like, I looked at it as like, I want to do this cool thing, work on this festival, see if that's something I want to do more of, which I think I probably do. I had said at the end of the festival that, I'd be happy to come back and do it again next year. What I learned was that, the days went on too. So that day was 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. That was 13 hours, right? And then the next day was 11 a.m., or 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., then the next day was 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., and then Saturday was 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., I think. Or maybe that was 10 p.m. too. Yeah, fuck. Yeah, that was 11 to 10, and then Sunday was 12 to noon. So that was an easy day. But then, of course, we added on all the breakdown time and had to break everything down and get it ready for the event rental company to come take it away. So it ended up being like 12 to 5. Wasn't that bad. And then on the subsequent days, I had volunteers, and I was able to get a couple of little breaks where I was like, okay, like, hey, you guys got this under control, right? And the thing with the volunteers is obviously you can trust some of them, you can't trust other ones, but there were a few of them that I got 2 days in a row, and by the second day I was like, all right, like, you got this, so I'm going to go see this band. So the bands I got to see were Atakak, A-T-A, and then second word K-A-K. I think they were from Ghana. That was like super upbeat, fun music. That felt almost like video game music with like Ghana dialect lyrics over it, but all of it was super bright and positive. I got to see them for a little while. I got to see this amazing black female blues guitar player from Austin named Jakey Vinson. But even seeing them, like I wanted to see them, but I only got to see 2 or 3 songs because I ran out of the hotel over to the main stage, which wasn't that far. Watched a couple of songs and then went back. I was always kind of like, I gotta get back. But then on Saturday, I think it was, Saturday, I went to see which W period I period T period C period H period. We intend to cause havoc. Is what it stood for. It was an acronym, and I didn't know anything about them, and I just assumed they were a metal band. And then they came to check in, and there were African dudes, and then there was this Italian dude wearing like a red beret and a scarf and like combat boots and a single shark tooth earring, and it looked like something out of that movie, The Warriors. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? So I said hi to them. Hey, here's your packet and everything. That went down and all. And as soon as they left, I was like, whoa, who are these guys? What the fuck is this band? And it turns out they are the kings of Zamrock, Zambian rock and roll. And they were the biggest band in Zambia in the 70s. Zambia is in southern Africa, and I've been there. I bungee jumped off the Victoria Falls Bridge. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, waterfall in the world is Victoria Falls, named after the British Queen. They gotta change the names of all this shit. Fuck the monarchy. Anyway, so the Victoria Falls Bridge. Yeah, I bungee jumped off that. On one of my trips to Botswana, we went to Zambia. Zambia is on the northern border of Botswana, and then the Victoria Falls, the river that flows into the falls, separates Zambia and Zimbabwe. And yeah, I walked over it. If you walk all the way over to the other side of the bridge, there's a sign that says entering Zimbabwe, and there's not, you can sort of like step foot on Zimbabwe soil before you have to go through customs. So I did walk over to the other side of the bridge. So technically I've been in Zimbabwe, but didn't get my passport stamped. Didn't really go to Zimbabwe, but I definitely did go to Zambia. And maybe I'll tell that story another time. Maybe I'll just tell it right now. Okay, so we drove to Zambia, and so we went to Victoria Falls and we stayed in like a hostel. It was with my ex-girlfriend who, I'll get into this at much more depth at another time, but I met this woman in New York named Amy, 2012 or so, and we went on a few dates, and we were really starting to click, and it was obvious that we were really clicking and like sort of falling for each other. And she was like, hey, I just want to tell you before this goes any further, I applied to be in the Peace Corps, and I'm waiting to hear, and if I get accepted, I'm going. And I was like, okay, when are you supposed to hear? And we had met in like March, and she had said like supposed to hear by like June or July, and then once I hear if I'm accepted, then I go pretty quickly after that. And I was like, cool, you know what? Let's just have a fun few months until you figure it out. And like, you're gonna go join the Peace Corps, cool. Like, but we don't have to like stop our budding relationship just because you're going to be going away. And so she got accepted to the Peace Corps, and I was with her when she got the email, and she actually said, she was like reading the email, she's like, oh my God, I got accepted. And I'm like, cool, where are they sending you? Because you don't get to pick where you're going to go when you join the Peace Corps. And she was like, Botswana. And I was like, where's that? And she was like, I don't know. She opened Google Maps, and she's like, cool, it's in southern Africa. And like, I had heard about Botswana, but honestly, I said this before, so it's not a fresh line off the top of my head, but I said to Amy, when it was a fresh line at the top of my head, and I've repeated it to a lot of friends, I said, Botswana sounds like that sounds like the place where my parents would threaten to send me if I didn't finish my food. Like, oh, you can't finish your food? Well, there's plenty of starving kids in Botswana. Maybe we should send you to Botswana. And I had no idea it was in southern Africa, right above South Africa. So anyway, she went off, and we said a teary goodbye, but we had a bunch of fun hangs, and she ended up going off to Botswana, and I thought I would never hear from her again because I figured she'd be in some like tiny African village, and she was. Like, they send them for 2 months to one place to do language training and cultural training, and then they send you off to where you end up. And she ended up in this village called Sese, which was just in sort of southern Botswana, about 3 hours from the capital of Gaborone. And she ended up in this village that had cell service for some weird reason, and it had like sporadic amounts of, no, did it have, no, it didn't have electricity. It had sporadic amounts of water. That's right. You would get water for a couple of hours a day, and that you would have to go to, like, the whole village would have to go to this water pipe that the government installed. So there's no water in your houses. But I think that's right. Half the village had electricity. The half that Amy's house, she had this like cinder block house. I would actually call it a house. It had a kitchen with a propane. It had a refrigerator that was powered by a propane tank, and it had a little stove that was also powered by a propane tank. And the rest was cinder block, and it didn't have any electricity. I mean, it was all cinder block, and there was a living room and 2 bedrooms. So it was kind of like as far as that part of the world is concerned, it was a really nice house. Anyway, I went to visit her first time. Well, she got a cell phone, like a cheap little, like one of those old Nokia phones. It didn't flip open and have a keypad or anything. So she had to text with like pushing the 2 button, once for A, twice for B, 3 times for C, that kind of thing. But when she finally got settled there and got a phone, she texted me and was like, "Hey, I have a phone. I can charge it at the school where I'm working because they have electricity there, and like there's a cell tower." And what I learned is like these cell phone companies went around putting solar powered cell phone towers all over Africa, to like trick, like most of the people didn't need cell phones. So the cell phone companies just brought cell phones, and then all of a sudden the people needed cell phones, right? And most of them were just communicating with each other because they weren't smartphones. And was like, why do you need to communicate like that with someone on the other side of the village? What I'm saying is their lives were fine, but the greed of the cell phone corporations were like, if we put these cell phone towers in, we can get people to have cell phones. And got them on small little plans, but like, what they say, a river of nickels turns into a waterfall of dollars. So anyway, she was like, hey, we can chat. Like, we can still be friends and communicate. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, hey, you want to come visit me? And I was like, yeah. So I actually was like, fuck it, if I'm going to go over there, I'll go over for a while. So I went for 6 weeks the first trip, kind of fell in love with it, was happy to like rekindle our romance relationship, with obviously fizzled out because we're not still together, but we had a lot of great times over there. And on one of the trips, I started becoming friends with people in the village, and the kids over there, they all speak English because it had been an English colony. And there was actually a lot of issues back then about the elders from the different villages and tribes were bummed that the kids weren't learning Setswana anymore, and it was becoming a dead language. But for whatever reason, the kids over there would call me Jakes, and I would say, my name is Jake, and they would be like, yes, Jakes. And I would be like, no, just Jake. No, just Jake. And they would be like, yes, Jakes. You are Jakes. And I would be like, okay. So kind of like every now and then I go by Jakes. Since then, maybe I should call it Tuesday with Jakes, this podcast. But anyway, one of these trips, I'll get way more into that at another time. The whole experience over there was fucking pretty magical and weird, and it definitely like changed my life. And the first time I came back from 6 weeks over there, I had a really hard time readjusting to New York, and I think that was pretty much the beginning of the end for me in New York City. And that's when I realized that like living out there for so long with no electricity and no connectivity, like there was cell service, but there wasn't enough for like, I couldn't send an email or anything. There was like, there was cell service, but not Wi-Fi's. So when I got there the first time, I had sort of set everything up because I wasn't expecting to have any service at all when I was over there, but I ended up just turning my phone off. Like after 3 days of like frustrating trying to download text messages, I just turned it off, and I was like, fuck it, I don't need it. So I didn't even look at my phone for 6 weeks. And I was like, this is fucking amazing. And that's that trip. I had traveled extensively before that, but always sort of been in touch. But I think that trip was really what did it for me. That was like, oh man, you can just have a slower life where you're not constantly communicating with people. And that sort of flipped a switch in my head that's still going on to this day. That's like, man, ride fast, live slow. Like, you don't need to be in touch with many people. Like, your brain is such a wonder. Mine is anyway, of imagination and excitement, and it took me a while. Obviously my brain had a lot of issues in it too. But But ever since the treatment stint and meditation and all that, I'm like, I'm much better at living with myself now. And that's why I was able to live in the woods last year, like literally up in Yellow Pine, and then live alone all winter. And anyway, so in that trip to Africa, I'm sure I'll do a whole episode sometime detailing the entirety of those crazy adventures. But yeah, so we took a ride to Zambia. We drove to Zambia. I ended up on my first trip there, like the first few weeks, we didn't have a vehicle at all, but we wanted to like travel around and see some other parts of Botswana. So I ended up buying a Honda CRV, like a little mini SUV I took the bus to Gaborone, the capital city of Botswana, which is like, I haven't been around a lot of Africa, but Botswana was definitely very underdeveloped. And I ended up buying this car off a Nigerian dude in a parking lot for $2,000, and it worked well. It never ended up needing any major repairs for as long as it was there, or I was using it there. And then I think Amy ended up giving it to someone else when she ended up leaving. I just told her, whatever, if you can sell it or whatever. And I think she gave it to a woman that she had met who could really use it. It's funny, this theme of giving away cars. I've only ever owned 3 cars in my life. One was a van in 1997 that I bought when we were, me and my partner Scott Pollock from Witch Records had put out an album of all punk bands doing TV theme songs, and we rented a car out west and followed the Warped Tour around selling CDs in the parking lot hand to hand to kids going to the Warped Tour. And then we flew back to the East Coast. We were going to do the East Coast run, and we were going to rent a van. And then one day we were literally walking down the street, and we saw a van in front of like a mechanic shop on West 26th Street between 10th and 11th Avenues. And it just had like soap in the window that said $1,000. And we're like, does it run? And the guy was like, yeah. And we're like, what's wrong with it? He's like, not much. So we bought it and drove it down to Florida and back on that Warped Tour. And then that was the first car I'd ever owned in my life. And I was 24 years old at that time. And eventually, neither of us knew shit about cars, and we just drove it to Florida and back. And then when we got back up, we ended up driving it up to Massachusetts for the New England leg of the Warped Tour, and then it just broke down on the side of the road and started smoking, and it turned out we hadn't thought to change the oil or put oil into it. And I hadn't owned a motorcycle at that point or anything, so neither of us really understood how cars worked, and just neither of us thought to check the oil and put oil in. We just, hey, it works. But anyway, that was the first vehicle I ever owned, and then, it got us. It was worth $1,000 because we didn't have to rent cars for that. For those jaunts. And then the next car I owned was in Botswana, and then the next car was the BMW I bought in Idaho. So I'm not very experienced with cars. But anyway, we bought that car, and we drove to Zambia, and we wanted to go to Victoria Falls. We went and visited some of our Peace Corps friends who were up in, I don't remember the town, but they were up in a village. It was right by the Zambian border. And it was a part of Botswana that had a fuck ton of elephants, and like where Amy lived was way down in the Kalahari Desert. It was just fucking sand and rocks everywhere. There was like very few trees. It was just ratty. But where her friend Teresa was, up in the north of Botswana on the Zambian border along the river, there was like lots of elephants and lush vegetation. It was beautiful. And we crossed over the border to Zambia, and we went to Victoria Falls, and we bungee jumped. We like went and saw the falls, did all this hiking, stayed in a hostel for 2 or 3 nights, and then Amy or me, I don't know, one of us had found this like collection of huts that was off deep in the bush in Zambia, and we drove the car to there, and then someone had to come get us in like a canoe and take us across this river because that was the only way to get onto this island where the huts were. And it was the whole little island and huts were owned by this fucking crazy Scottish guy who had built these huts down there and was living like his own very odd Colonel Kurtz type of existence. And so they had like these just very simple one-room huts. And I believe there was a toilet with running water. There might have been a shower, or he might have had to shower back in the main in the main house or whatever, like it was very primitive. And one night we heard all this commotion. The first night, like, we were out drinking with the owner and some other people, and then we heard this commotion, and we heard motorboats and stuff in the middle of the night. We woke up, what the fuck is going on? And then the next day we go back to the main hut. Like, it was sort of like the central room of this quote-unquote resort, and the thing had been burned down, and we were like, what the fuck happened? And the Scottish dude was like, obviously super hungover, and apparently he had been partying with some of the other guests, and they somehow lit the hut on fire, and then they decided to go out for a fucking boat ride in the middle of the night, and then the boat died, and they had to be rescued by another boat, and that's the motorboats we heard. He was pulling the other boat back, and they almost got a bunch of his guests killed, and it's miraculous that we went to bed before all of that went down, thankfully. And we stayed there another couple nights, and everybody was in a really bad mood except us because we weren't involved in the fucking torching of the main building. But that was my experience in Zambia. And then the other experience was I took, like, when we first got there, I took $400 or $500 in US dollars out of an ATM. And then when we got back, because I didn't realize how cheap everything was going to be, and whatever we paid to bungee jump, I think it was like $20 or $30 per person, US dollars, and I gave them money in Zambian dollars, whatever they call them over there. And we ended up going back to Botswana, and I was like, oh, I'll just change my money at the airport in Johannesburg before I fly home. So went back to Botswana spent some more time there. And then when I did get back, I flew from Gaborone, the capital city of Botswana. The flight was from Gaborone to Johannesburg to New York, and I had a layover, and I went to the money changing place, and they were like, we don't take this money. We don't change Zambian money. And I'm like, what are you kidding me? Like, pretty much all flights in Africa, like, there's not a lot of direct flights to Africa other than a few places. You can fly direct to Senegal, you can fly direct to Kenya, you can fly direct to South Africa from America. Most people will fly to Johannesburg if they're going to Southern Africa, and then get a connecting flight to wherever they're going. So, like, I figured the money would be easy to change, and they were like, money is worthless. So then I was like, okay, I got back to New York, and I went to a change place there. They're like, that money is worthless. And then I went to my bank, and I was like, can I deposit this money? And they're like, Zambian money is worthless outside of Zambia. I was like, fuck. Okay, so what I ended up doing with that money was mailing it to Amy's friend Teresa, who was on the Zambian border. And I was like, hey, you can just use this money. Like, if you ever cross the border to go to Zambia, like, here's money to use to do whatever with. Just a long history of giving money away. Kind of like that. Makes me feel good, and makes me really appreciate the people who have looked after me in this time of fallow finances. So yeah, that was my experience with Zambia. So then I see this Zambian band. They were so fucking good. It was two original members. The lead singer's name is Jagari, and he kind of named himself after Mick Jagger. And this is the 70s, of course. And then the keyboard player, and then the rest of the band was white dudes from Germany, Holland, and Belgium. But they were great players, and they just had these great African rhythms. Kind of funky, kind of bluesy, kind of rock and rolly. And Jagari would, like, get into these trances and dance, and there's a documentary out about them. I think it's called We Intend to Cause Havoc, which I plan on watching. So that set really blew me away. I saw this band Prism Bitch, who were fucking awesome. I didn't know anything about them, but when they checked in, I got turned on to so many good bands, because when I was checking a lot of these bands in, a lot of them are just smaller bands that I never heard of, and a lot of them from out west. And every time I checked a band in and they were cool people, I would go and put their music on. So I definitely got turned on to a lot of cool stuff. But Prism Bitch is Prism as in, like, the Dark Side of the Moon album cover, you know. They were called Prism Bitch. They're from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I had never heard of them. And then I went and checked them out. And from their look, they looked like kind of like punks. But then I listened to their music, and they were very indie rock. And then it dawned on me that when I went to see Built to Spill last year, that Prism Bitch was one of the openers, and the current lineup of Built to Spill it's Doug Marsh, the only constant member of Built to Spill, and he had a female bass player, a female drummer, rounding out his band, and Prison Bitch was one of the openers. And there was another opener that the bass player was in, and the drummer from Prison Bitch is in Built to Spill. And I was like, oh, okay, right, that's how I remember it. So I listened to some of their music, and it was just beautiful, like kind of indie rock. And then I went to see them. I missed one of their shows because we were just too crowded at check-in. But then I got to go see them over at the Masonic Temple with a crazy liquid light show going on, and it's fucking great. It was rammed, super rammed. Room probably held like 500 people, and there was a huge line down the block, and I was very happy for them because they were such nice people. And I like that I based everyone I listened to that week on, if they were nice and cool and kind of funny when they came to check in, I would put their music on, and more often than not, I liked it. So that was really cool. And there were a couple of bands. There was one called, what were they called? Sugarfoot or something like that. They were just a sleazy rock and roll band from Idaho who was playing at Neurolux. But when they came in, their music happened to be playing, and they were like, because there was a playlist that Treefort had made of all the artists who were playing the festival, and it was a Spotify playlist, 3 songs from every artist. So I just put that on shuffle. So that band came in. That wasn't who they were. They were okay. I was confusing a couple of bands here. Serpent Foot. So they were a band who I met who was super cool, but that wasn't who I was playing when they walked in. That was shit, I'm gonna find it. This band called Slurm Flirty Worm, who are also just a cool kind of trashy rock and roll band, kind of punky. Slurm Flirty Worm came in, and their music happened to be on shuffle, and they were like, "Hey, who picked this music?" And I was like, "Oh, I did." And it was just on shuffle, though, so I hadn't really picked it. But they were like, "Oh, my God, this is us. This is our band." And I'm like, "Oh, my God, cool, awesome. I'm going to come see you." And they gave me a sticker. Didn't end up going to see them. But and then the other band, the band from Ghana, the other African band, Atakak, they were playing when I came in, and they got so excited. And they were just like, that sort of stereotype of happy Africans who are just like, "Hey, hello, we are here. We are so happy to be here." They were like that, and I love that kind of vibe and energy. So they were psyched that I was playing their music, so I went over to watch them on the main stage, and they were just so much fun, and they had everybody boogieing, and yeah, and they had maybe a couple hundred people. They were playing pretty early, I think at like noon. And then the next day, when I went to see We Intend to Cause Havoc on the main stage, there were like, I don't know, close to 2,000 people there for them. And then you could tell people had been amped about them. And the documentary that they had was made by the Italian guy that I mentioned before that was wearing the beret. He's now their manager. He basically like tracked them down, found the singer who was still in touch with the keyboard player, and then put a band together of these European guys and kind of like revived the band and then filmed a documentary about them. So the documentary was playing as part of the Film Fort, part of the festival. And I think this guy Eric Gilbert, the festival director, was like, I saw him every time I went to see a band that I was into, I would see him there. And I've met him a couple times before down in Boise, and just a rad dude who loves music, and not a lot of promoters left out there like him. I consider myself one of them who just seem to be into it because they love music, and like if they can make money at it, awesome. Whereas like most promoters that I meet, you can just tell they're like, yeah, they kind of like music, and that this ended up being their job, and people are like, "Oh, I have to go to this show," that kind of vibe. And obviously, I've talked about losing my love for being a promoter, but I haven't lost my love for music, and I kind of thought I did. But seeing these bands play down there and seeing Steve Pultz a couple weeks ago, I realized what I had done was I had tried to trick myself into believing that I didn't like music anymore. And even for a couple of years pre-going crazy, I was seeing less and less music because it was hard for me to see music and not feel badly about having it be my business and not being interested in the business anymore. And it was very hard to separate those feelings. And I actually was talking to my buddy the other day. I don't want to call him out because I'm going to share his personal feelings, but he listens to this podcast, and I'm sure he's going to know exactly what I'm talking about. But he sent me a message the other day where, I was like, hey, I'm back in New York. And I said, I was like, oh, we got to hang out. And he's like, how you feeling about being in New York? Oh, yeah, good and whatever. And I was like, how's things with you? And he said something about, like, he's like, I've been having a lot of anxiety lately about seeing some of these older rock bands having their big revivals. And like Brian Jonestown Massacre playing in these big venues. And he's like, maybe I should have written better songs, but I'm having that envy of like, I wish that was me. And I was like, hey, man, I tried to comfort him a little via text, but I thought a lot more about it. And I told him, hey, you just, you did what you did at the time you did it. And I think that about myself too. And I told him, like, I had the same feelings when I see guys that started booking shows at the same time I did, who are now doing arena shows and theater shows, and I would assume making really good livings doing it. I don't know how these people get paid, especially when you work for a bigger corporation like a Live Nation or AEG. Like, obviously your shows make the company a fuck ton of money, but do you make a fuck ton? Like, I know where some of these people are living, so I know they're making pretty damn good livings based on the apartments they bought for themselves. And I had that issue a lot with myself. Like, Rocksoft was fucking killing it from when we started in 2002 to 2007, 2008. We were really killing it. And then I ended up in Tragedy. And that sort of changed. I spent 5 years playing in that band and traveling all over. And, like, I put so much of my energy into building that band and being the manager and doing all the merch and all the booking and all the advancing and the travel arrangements, and just like all the energy I had went into Tragedy, and like I also kept booking shows. And looking back on it, like I realized that that's where Rocksoft sort of took a turn where I really should have kept the pedal to the metal if I wanted Rocksoft to become an ongoing concern that was making a lot of money. And I still managed to make a fair amount of money over all those years, but my focus got taken away from it. And when thinking about what my buddy said, it's like we got to remember that, like, we made the choices we made, and maybe maybe the songs he was writing weren't pop songs, they were more inaccessible, heavier music or whatever. But like everything we did led us to where we are, and like you can't have regrets about that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I spent a lot of time regretting how much time I put into Tragedy, because after 5 years I quit the band. The band kept going. They've never been nearly as successful without me as they were with me, which gave me a little good feeling, like, oh, I did matter in that band. But really, like, I would have been just as happy if they became super successful. At least now I feel that way. Before though, I kind of was like happy to see them not doing well because it validated my own ego or something. But in the years after that, I would look back and be like, man, if I hadn't spent so much time fucking trying to make this band a big deal and like never really made any money out of that band, but I can't be sad about that, because all the experiences I collected in that band. We did 7 UK tours. We played all over the United States. I got into so many weird, cool situations, met so many different people who I'm still friends with now. And that's something I kind of wanted to say to my buddy. It's like, hey man, like, maybe your band isn't doing theaters like Brian Jonestown Massacre now, but like that band was a cool thing to do for all the time that you did it. And I think a lot of us who gave ourselves over to some sort of weird creative passion at a certain time in our lives, yeah, we didn't end up winning that lottery of like being in a successful band that plays forever. But like, even if you get in that band, does it matter? Like, Arcade Fire recently played a bunch of shows at the Bowery Ballroom. They just kept playing one night after the other, and just kept announcing them the next day. They announced one show the day it was happening, and then the next day they're like, hey, we're doing it again tonight. And then the next day they're like, hey, we're doing it again tonight. Here's how you get tickets. But in the midst of all that, it's the first shows they'd done in a while, and Win Butler is like the leader of that band, lead singer, and his brother Will Butler just quit. And it's like, that guy was in the Arcade Fire, but he said, hey, it's just run its course for me. And for a lot of people, like, there's a lot of people who are in bands that are still touring, and that's how they make their living, but they're not excited about it anymore. So it's like, maybe I could still be in Tragedy. Maybe I could be making money, but I quit that band when it wasn't fun or interesting to me anymore. And I know my buddy that I'm talking about, he quit his band at a certain point in the late 2000s when it wasn't fun or interesting for him, and they've gotten back together and done more shows. And, I think maybe you lose some momentum, so the shows they're playing aren't as big as they used to be. But it's like, do you enjoy doing it? Did you enjoy it while it was happening? And like, we made our decisions back then based on what we wanted to do in that moment. And sure, we could maybe we all could have made smarter decisions, not just me and this guy I'm talking about, but other people in life. But like, what would the sensible decision have been? Like, okay, if I had made nothing but sensible decisions, would I have had fun throughout my 30s the way I did? I had so much fun in my 30s. I traveled all over the world. I got to be on stage performing in front of so many different people in different countries. And like, yeah, do I have anything to show for it financially now? No. And did it sort of have a negative effect on the other part of my life, which was the business I had started? Sure. But like, I didn't want to do that business anyway. Maybe I would have felt differently about it had I like focused more on that. But like, I just want to do what I want to do. And then, that maybe that's going to come back to bite me in the ass when I'm 70, but maybe some other people are going to get to 70 and realize that they have a pension and health insurance and everything's all taken care of, but then they're 70 and they're going to be like, why didn't I have any fun for the rest of my life? And then, like, how much fun can you have once you turn 70, right? When your knees are creaking all the time. Or can you go stand up at a concert? Can you go ride a motorcycle? Can you go bungee jump off the Victoria Falls Bridge? No. So, like, you can't stress yourself out or worry about like, oh, if I had made better choices when I was younger. It's like, well, yeah, I'm probably going to have to work until the day I die to just be able to keep myself alive, right? I'd have shelter and food, or maybe, who knows, maybe I'll have another act in my 50s that'll become lucrative and I'll have a cushion of money to lay back on. But like right now, I got barely any money, but I'm mostly happy. And I say mostly happy because I'm back in New York now, as you know, and that's left me with definitely some different feelings. Where am I at now? Well, 57 minutes, all right. But I'm not going to stop anytime soon because I still got things to say today. And, yeah, I'm back in New York, and that's definitely different feelings, right? I had a really good time in Boise, and it was really long hours and hard work, and by the end of every day I was pretty exhausted, and I tried to go see Neil Francis and got turned away because the venue was full, and like the pass they gave me for the weekend was just like a regular person pass. And very few people had like the all super access pass that let get you in any venue because it was happening like South by Southwest or like CMJ used to be. It was happening at all these different venues around town. So the Neil Francis show was full. There was a line around the block of the building. They were doing one in, one out. So as people left, they were letting more people in. I was like, I'm just too tired. I'm not going to stand on this line. And then the next night I tried to go see Lightning Bolt at the same venue, same time of night. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's full too. It's like, oh, God, and I'm just so tired and exhausted. But I had a fucking great time there, and it sort of reminded me that I do like working around music. But then I had to come to New York, and what I think I liked was that I didn't have to worry about anything. Like, when I finished with my artist check-in for the day, I was done. Like, it didn't matter to me if something went wrong on the main stage or whatever. Like, it felt nice to be part of something bigger, but not have the responsibility of putting the whole thing on. And it's like, yeah, I got paid, and like, at the end of my shift on Sunday, she gave me a check for $1,000 and then the extra $50 in cash in my envelope, and fucking signed the back of the check, took a picture of it with my little bank app and deposited it. And I was like, cool, I'm done. There's nothing else to do here. But it reminded me that like, okay, cool. I like being around these vibes. I don't like being the guy who's stressing about every detail though. So I don't know that continuing to be a full-time promoter is in my future. But I like to find out that I did still enjoy working around music, though Monday morning I finally got up, and not finally got up. I mean, I was up at fucking 5 a.m. because I had a 7:30 flight. But I got to the airport and I started stressing, and the anxiety started to come back for the first time since I had left McCall. I didn't have any anxiety all week in Boise, and I started having anxiety, and I was like, maybe I should just not get on the plane, switch my flight to tomorrow. I'm so tired. I'm so worn out. I don't want to go to New York right now because I don't know what's waiting for me there. And I thought about going back to my hotel and just kind of like checking in for another day and just relaxing. But I was like, you know what? You'll be fine. And then I got on the first flight to Seattle, and then it was a quick transfer from Seattle to New York, quick changeover, layover. And by the time I was on the flight to New York, I was feeling good about it. And I got here, and last time I got here, my boy Imran picked me up at the airport when I was here in October. And I was anxious about coming here then, too, because I hadn't been back to New York for so long. But Imran picked me up at the airport, and we went out for some pizza and halal food in Williamsburg. And I sort of made the mistake on that trip of, I posted a picture to Instagram, a couple of pictures of me eating in Williamsburg. And then all of a sudden my phone blew up with people being, we got to hang out. And I was so overwhelmed because it was like, Then I felt like this pressure to go out every day and do things. And when I got here the other night, Monday night, nobody picked me up at the airport because nobody loves me enough. And I got off the plane and I went to wait in the taxi line because I was like, I'm going to splurge for a taxi. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm going to splurge for a taxi because I had checked a bag that weighed 48.5 pounds because I knew I was going to be here for a month. And I was like, and I also, like, I had all this stuff in my car. When the car broke down, there was stuff I was planning on just leaving in my car. So I left some stuff at Greg and Shanti's house in McCall. So when I go back, I'll have the stuff I need to go motorcycle riding and my camping gear and all that. Anyway, so I had a checked bag plus a carry-on plus a backpack. And I was like, I'm going to splurge. And then I waited in the taxi line for a yellow cab because I don't know what it is. I just don't believe in Uber anymore. I don't want to give them any more money. And like, I feel for the drivers, sure, but like, I just keep seeing how they're raising prices during the pandemic. And like, man, I really miss the time where you could just step out into the street and hail a yellow cab, right? Like, what happened to those days? Because there's no yellow cabs anymore. The last time I was here in October, I tried to get a cab at like noon in downtown Brooklyn. And, you know, pre-Uber, you'd get a cab in fucking 12 seconds. And I remember it really pissed me off. And I was like, fuck, that's all because of Uber. And I just don't want to support the techification of things. I don't want to use Seamless or Grubhub. If I want food, I'll walk out to the place where I want to get my food from. And I think when you live for so long, too, like I used Seamless incessantly for a bunch of years in the 2000 teens. And then I didn't use it during the pandemic. Because I just wasn't into getting food delivered, so I was cooking for myself. I didn't have a lot of money, whatever. But I just don't want to participate in more of the techification of America, where everything that you do is done from your phone. Oh, I need a car. I'm just going to go on my phone, and a car will pull up. It's like, go walk to the subway train. Or if you really need a car, like, yeah, if I'm desperate, like, the only way I was going to get from the bus station in Boise to my hotel was to use Uber, right? I guess I could have Googled a Boise taxi service, but I didn't feel like doing that at that time. But anyway, if I don't have to use it, I don't want to use it. So I waited in line for a yellow cab, but the line was moving so glacially because there were so few yellow cabs, whereas the cab lines at JFK used to move super fast because there was a constant supply of taxis to put people into. So I waited for a while, and then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to go to the air train. And I took the air train to the A train to the G train, and it was $10.75. It's $8 for the air train, $2.75 for the taxi. So instead of paying like $70-something with tip for a taxi, I got home for $10.75. And my friend Christine was still at work, and I got back here at like 7 or so, and I thought about going to see Brian Jonestown Massacre that night, but I was just like so beat and exhausted that I just went for a walk. I walked 15 minutes to Baby Luke's, the slice version of Lucali pizza, and I got a couple slices of pizza, and I didn't post it to Instagram, and I didn't want to tell anyone I was here. I texted some close friends that I really want to see and said, hey, I'm back. Like, let's get together some point. And then yesterday, a couple of friends were like, so that was Monday night. Then I went to sleep, got up Tuesday morning, and I was like, I haven't had a day off in forever between traveling and moving out of my house in Yellow Pine and then the car breaking down and all those issues and then working at the festival. I was like, I'm going to treat this day like a Sunday. And a couple of friends were like, hey, you want to come get lunch, whatever. I was like, I'm not doing shit. And I just sat around and I read read a book, and just chilled. And then I ended up going out with my boy Backyard Bill last night. We went to see Sparks, which is another show I had like set up in advance. So we went to see Sparks. I had asked a month ago for the tickets for the Sparks show, and my friend got me comps. And Sparks is a weird band of brothers that got together in the late 60s. They're 73 and 76 years old now. It is Ronald and Russell Mayer, and they just go by the name Sparks. And like their first album was produced by Todd Rundgren, and it's just fucking weird sort of art pop. It's kind of like if Frank Zappa and Klaus Nomi and Andrew Lloyd Webber had like a retarded child, it would be Sparks. Never really enjoyed their recorded output, the stuff I listened to, but I always like respected them. And I respected the fact that they're still going after all these years and have a big cult following. But as I was saying to Backyard Bill last night, like during the pandemic, they managed to get 2 movies out. They got a movie out called Annette, which they wrote and recorded all the music for, and it's like an opera in that every line of dialogue is sung. And that movie stars Adam Driver and Marianne Cotillard, the famous French actress. And I didn't even know that was a movie until Backyard told me last night. But there's another movie out called The Sparks Brothers on Netflix. It's a documentary about them that I read a couple of reviews on. It didn't make me want to watch it because apparently it's like 3+ hours. And one of the reviews I read from Bob Lefsetz said that like it left you wondering, who are these men? And that's what I said to Backyard Bill. I was like, I kind of want to watch the documentary because, like, where did these guys come from in the late 60s that they make this kind of fucking bizarro music? And it's really bizarre, and it's, like, not very palatable. And in fact, it was very, like, gay in a way that felt like when you would call something gay in the 80s. It felt very Glee Club, art room, weird, Broadway, show-tuney, not cool. And I kind of still feel the same way after seeing them live. Though I let myself get into it. We thought we were going to stay. I said to Backyard, I was like, dude, if we stay for 3 songs or 5 songs, I don't really care. The tickets are free. I just kind of like, I want to see what this band is all about live. And I had no idea. I said to Backyard, like, if 5 years ago somebody had asked me to book this band in New York City, I would have booked them at BB King's and, like, hoped for, like, that we'd sell 400 tickets. But they sold 2,000 tickets, or 2,400. I think Town Hall's 1,200 capacity. They sold out 2 nights, like, sold the fuck out. And when they took the stage, everybody leapt to their feet out of their seats. Town Hall is a fully seated venue in the Broadway Theater District. It's on 44th Street between maybe 43rd, I forget. 43rd or 44th Street between Broadway and 6th Avenue, and everyone leapt out of their seats, and they were having so much fun. I got into it. I was clapping along. The whole time I was like, I don't really like this music, but I certainly appreciate it, and I'm having fun enjoying it in the moment. Like, I wasn't in danger at any point of being like, I'm a convert to Sparks, but I'm so happy that 40+ years later, almost 45 years since they first got together, they're still having this success, and that people are stoked about it and having a good time. And the singer was like, had a fucking great voice, was hitting every note. He's very outgoing and flamboyant, and then his brother looks like a real creep. Looks like kind of like a villain from a horror movie in the 30s when it was all black and white, and he's wearing all black and like kind of scowling and playing the piano and got a pencil thin mustache, and got up and quote unquote sang one song, which is more like spoken word. Then towards the end, he like got up, walked to the middle of the stage, took his little suit coat jacket off, and then did this fucking goofy dance and kind of winked at the crowd, and it was a really good time. And I'm so glad I went out and did that. But then we went to Little Frankie's, then had some pizza, some late night pizza action, and it feels good to not be in a rush to see anybody and just sort of like just kind of being here in New York. Last time, I think part of what made me so anxious about being here was that I was trying to see everybody and fit it all in, and I got to eat here and go there. And like yesterday, I didn't leave the house. Literally didn't walk out of this fucking building until almost 7 p.m. when we were headed to the show. And I like that. I wasn't texting a bunch of people yesterday. I was just kind of chilling and hanging out. And I want to do more of that. And like, yeah, just because I'm here in New York doesn't mean I have to go see everything in New York. I'm just going to vibe it up. And like, I'll be here and to go to Detroit next week for the Jack White shows. And then I guess I'll be back here for 2 weeks, and then April 26th, fly back to Idaho, get my motorcycle, and then who knows what's next. Will I go back to work at Yellow Pine? I don't know. Will I find another town to work in? I don't know. Will I end up being a city slicker and spending the whole summer here? I don't know. Will I move back to New York City full-time forever? I don't know. I kind of doubt that one, but I'm open to letting the universe tell me what to do. And with that, I'm going to go. I'm going to leave you guys to let the universe tell you what to do with your day, with your week, with your lives. What I'm not going to do is force anything. I'm not going to go see somebody that I don't feel like hanging out with just because I'm in New York and they want to hang out. That said, if you listen to this podcast and you want to hang out, let me know. I should be performing. Performing? That's a weird word. I should be talking the Stoke the Fire podcast with Matt Stocks and Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage. Jesse's the singer of that band. They're doing a live podcast event in the East Village at the space that was formerly Brownies, formerly Hi-Fi, formerly Coney Island Baby. It's now called East Berlin. It's on Avenue A. I believe it's between 11th and 12th Street. They're doing a live podcast Sunday that I've agreed to participate in, though I got to say at this moment, I'm not sure I'm going to do it because I'm not sure I want to be in a room full of people talking with no mask on, and I don't think I would do a live podcast without a mask. But I committed to it, so I'll probably do it. But I don't want to get COVID again. Everyone here, the vibe seems to be like, if we get it again, we get it. And that's not how I feel about it. So I don't know that it's the wisest thing to do. But my friend Matt Stocks, who does that podcast, I've also been on his Life in the Stocks. He's been on my podcast as a guest twice now, I believe. He's making his first ever trip to New York City to do this, and part of the reason I scheduled my flight to be home this week, a big part of it was so that I could be on this event, but more so I can show him around New York. So I'm going to take him on a guided tour of New York on Saturday. I think we're going to start by taking the train out to Brooklyn, and eating at Grimaldi's, which I think is called something else now, but that original, I think it's called Giuliana's. There's a whole war over the fight over the Grimaldi's name, and then Grimaldi's moved next door, but it's not the original, and then the original is, they changed the name to Giuliana's, which is the name of the mother of Patsy Grimaldi, who started it. I believe that's what it is. It's been a while since I've looked into that. But anyway, we're going to eat pizza there. Then we're going to walk over the Brooklyn Bridge into Manhattan. I'm going to walk them up through the East Village. We're probably going to go up through Times Square. Just going to show them around, show them a bunch of different things. And then I guess the next day, and then Saturday night, I'm going to give a talk to my former treatment center. They have guest speakers every Saturday night, so I'm going to do that via Zoom, where we tell our story of how we ended up there, how we healed, and how life is going now, to try to give the current inmates there some hope as to, like, hey, man, like, it's fucking weird as fuck being there right now, right? Getting this treatment, realizing that you're fucking crazy, and kind of show them, hey, so everything can work out on the other side. So I'm going to do that on Saturday night, and that'll be my second time doing that since I left treatment. And then it's opening weekend of my softball team, which I paid to be part of again this year, $90, because I have a feeling I'm going to be in New York a bunch over the summer for my shows, so I wanted to rejoin my softball team and go hang out with those buds. So we'll be playing 7 o'clock in J.J. Walker Park in the East Village, in case you want to come spectate. In the West Village, sorry. It's, I believe, is it Clarkson? Whatever Carmine Street turns into when it crosses Varick. I think it's Clarkson. But anyway, it's over there right across from, there's the Equinox in the Printer Center building. On Hudson Street. That's where the softball game is, so that's where we're going to be. And then next week I'm going out to Detroit. I'm going to go to the Speakeasy Meats headquarters. We're going to have some surprises for you from some stuff I'm doing out there, but I'm going to check in again next week on that. And I'm still trying to figure out, am I going to rent that car and go see Jack White in Grand Rapids? I'm going to Jack White for 2 nights at the Masonic Temple in Detroit, then either stay in Detroit for Flaming Lips or rent a car, go see Jack White at Grand Rapids, then back to Detroit, and then Monday Night Raw at the Little Caesars Arena, which I'm excited. I love going into arenas that I've never been to before, so I'm excited to go to a new arena, and then I'll be flying back to New York that Tuesday, the 12th, and then I'll have 2 more weeks here, and then I go get on my motorcycle for the first time since fucking October, and fucking stoked about that. I can't wait to get back on my motorcycle, even though it might be cold as fuck up in Grangeville, Idaho, where my motorcycle is being stored. I'm going to get on it, and I have my snowboard pants, and I have my big fucking heavy North Face jacket, and I'm going to ride south and down to Zion National Park in southern Utah, maybe Moab. I'm just going to go to where it's super sunny out and just let the sun beat down upon my skin, to paraphrase Robert Plant. Like always, even more than always, if you like this podcast and you find value in it and you want to send some appreciation for that value my way monetarily, you can do that. Venmo 917-443-7615, or just text me and say, hey, I love this podcast. I like getting texts. Or you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Jake Roxoff. My name, obviously, on Facebook is Jake Sufnerowski. If you can't figure out how to spell it, then I guess we can't be friends. Google is both of our friends, even though it's really our enemy. I love hearing from people. Thank you for supporting me throughout this podcast just by telling me you're listening. And thank you. I would do it anyway. Thank you is weird, but I appreciate hearing from you. That's what I'm saying. Is thank you for letting me know that you appreciate it when you do. And if you don't, leave me alone. Thankfully, I haven't gotten anybody telling me my podcast sucks yet. But if I did, and then I saw him in real life, I'd probably smack him, because I'd be like, why do you have to tell people negative things? Like, there's too many things. It's like when you read a bad movie review. Just don't review the movie, right? Or a bad album review. Why are you going to give an album a bad review? And unless it's like so stupendously bad by a band that's only been known for doing great things. But like, life's too short to talk bad things about people, things, art, whatever. So yeah, don't tell me you don't like the podcast, but tell me if you like it. And I'm going to tell you if I like you. If you're someone in my life who I like, you probably already heard from me telling you that I like you. So, I don't really need any more validation. I like it. But I would say if you only have so much validation in your little validation bank, I would send a message to your friend. Someone you love in your life that hasn't heard from you in a while. You should send them a message telling them how much you love them and appreciate them. I'm going to do some of the same of that today. And then I'm going to go see my friend Angela tonight and get my hair did, because it's kind of out of control, right? But it's actually kind of fucking awesome, too. It's been looking really good lately, so she better not do too much different to it. Will it get all pink? Will it stay blonde like this? I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm going to go sit down on her chair and just figure it out then. But I'll be doing that at 5:30 tonight, then having dinner. And then I don't know what else. I hope I don't see any other friends between now and then other than Christine, who it's her apartment that I'm staying in. And tomorrow, I don't know what I'm going to do. Friday, I don't know what I'm going to do. Saturday, actually, yeah, I do. I'm going to hang out with another friend on Friday. Then I'm going to hang out with Matt Stocks on Saturday. Then I'm probably going to do this live podcast thing on Sunday. And then maybe Monday, I'm just going to sit around and do nothing, because that is one of my favorite things to do, is just be. To just be a human being. Not doing anything, just being and hanging out. Maybe I'll read, maybe I'll write, maybe I'll paint, maybe I'll get this room tidied up a little bit. It's such a mess. It's a mess because it was kind of a mess when I got here. There's just random stuff in it, but then of course my stuff is falling down and stuff, as you saw at the beginning of this podcast, and it's like, woo. Anyway, that's it for today. Yeah, at Jake Roxoff, hit me up, 917-443-7615. Yeah, that's it. If you want to hang out, let me know. If I'm feeling like it. One thing I can tell you is I'm not gonna make plans for next Tuesday right now. But I'm just gonna go with the flow. And if I want to see someone, like, It's stressing me out to have to see Matt Stocks and take him around on Saturday. Not that I don't want to see him, but because anytime I make plans far in the future and then it comes to it, I'm like, well, what if I'm not in the mood to see them today? So that's why I'm not making a move to see anyone on Sunday. Like, or on Monday. And then Monday, I'm going to wake up and see how I feel. And if I feel like hanging out with someone, I'll text them and be like, hey, man, you want to hang out? I'm in Brooklyn. Oh, how about next Tuesday? Well, ask me next Tuesday. You know what I mean? And then maybe I'll see you next Tuesday. Anyway, that's another episode of Tuesdays with Jakey. Thank you for listening. And if you're listening, I assume it's because you get a lot of entertainment out of this. Entertainment and whatever other value. It affects you in a positive way. So I'm happy that you're finding something good and a reason to listen to this. And that's about it for today. Okay. God bless. Take care of your friends. Tell your loved ones you love them. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Inshallah. Peace.